Staff Sergeant Riley Knox had been staring at the same crossword puzzle for 3 hours when the first explosion lit up the valley like a dying star. The pencil slipped from her fingers as the thunderous boom rolled across the Afghan mountains, rattling the reinforced glass of her guard tower. She lunged for her rifle, muscle memory taking over as she swept the weapon toward the sound. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Her radio should have erupted with chatter by now. Base alarms should be screaming. The quick reaction force should be mobilizing. Instead, silence stretched across the airwaves like a held breath. Riley pressed her ear to the radio, hearing nothing but the soft hiss of static. Even the routine check-ins from the perimeter guards had gone quiet. "Control, this is Tower 7, she whispered into her headset. "I've got explosions to the northeast, approximately 3 clicks out. Request immediate sitrep." Nothing. Riley's hands trembled as she adjusted her night vision goggles and scanned the darkness beyond the checkpoint. The green-tinted world revealed the familiar landscape of Forward Operating Base Sentinel, a collection of prefab buildings, concrete barriers and razor wire carved into the mountainside like a metallic tumor. Behind her, 2,000 soldiers slept in their bunks, trusting that she and a handful of other guards would keep them safe through another night in this godforsaken corner of the world. Another explosion bloomed in the distance, closer this time. Riley could see the orange flash with her naked eye before the night vision washed it out in a cascade of white pixels. The sound followed seconds later, a deep rumble that she felt in her chest. Whatever was happening out there, it was moving toward the base. She tried the radio again, cycling through every frequency she knew. Any station. This is Tower 7 requesting immediate assistance. We have explosions in Sector 7. Possible enemy contact." The silence that answered her was more terrifying than any gunfire. Riley's mind raced through possibilities. Equipment failure seemed unlikely. Her radio had been working fine an hour ago during the routine check-in. Jamming was possible, but the enemy rarely had that kind of sophisticated equipment in this region. Unless, a cons. New sound cut through her thoughts. The low rumble of diesel engines, growing louder by the second. Riley swung her rifle toward the main access road, the one that wound down from the mountain pass like a concrete snake. Through her scope, she could see dust clouds rising in the distance, illuminated by starlight. Vehicles, moving fast. No headlights. Riley's finger found the alarm button on her console, but she hesitated. False alarms were career killers, and she'd already been written up twice this month for minor infractions. But as the engine noise grew louder, every instinct screamed that something was catastrophically wrong. The first vehicle crested the hill, like a mechanical predator, its angular silhouette unmistakably American. A Humvee, but not like the ones in the motor pool. This one was sleek, modified, painted in a matte black that seemed to absorb light. Behind it came 2 more identical vehicles, moving in perfect formation with the precision of a special operations unit. Riley's training kicked in. She grabbed her binoculars and tried to make out unit markings, but the vehicles were too far away and moving too fast. They were definitely heading for her checkpoint, which meant she had maybe 2 minutes to figure out if they were friendly or if she was about to become the first casualty of a very bad night. The lead vehicle's turret hatch opened, and a figure emerged. Even at this distance, Riley could see the person was wearing American gear, but that didn't mean much. Enemy forces had been known to use captured equipment. She needed positive identification before she could. The figure in the turret raised their right hand and made a series of quick gestures. Riley's blood turned to ice water, thought it was a hand signal she hadn't seen in 2 years. A recognition code from her previous assignment, back when she'd been part of something that officially didn't exist. The signal was specific, complex, and known to fewer than 30 people in the entire military. Most of those people were dead. Riley's hand shook as she lowered her binoculars. Operation Ghostwire had been classified at levels that required congressional oversight. The mission had been so black that even thinking about it in detail could land her in federal prison. She'd been reassigned to this backwater checkpoint, specifically to help her forget what she'd seen, what she'd done, who she'd been. But someone in that convoy knew her old call sign. Someone knew the recognition codes that should have been buried with the operation. The vehicles were close enough now that she could hear the whine of their turbocharged engines. They were moving at nearly 60 miles per hour on a road that was barely safe at 30. Whoever was driving had either lost their minds or was in one hell of a hurry. Riley's finger hovered over the alarm button again. Protocol demanded that she challenge any unscheduled convoy, especially one moving at combat speed in the middle of the night. But that hand signal changed everything. If these were Ghostwire assets, then sounding an alarm could compromise whatever operation they were running. On the other hand, if this was some kind of elaborate deception, the lead Humvee hit the final straightaway toward her checkpoint, and Riley could see the driver clearly now. Male, wearing a helmet and body armor, but something about his posture seemed familiar. The way he held his shoulders, the angle of his head, she'd seen that silhouette before, in briefing rooms that didn't officially exist. 30 seconds out, Riley made her decision. She flipped the safety cover off the barrier controls and prepared to raise the steel beam that could stop a truck. If these were friendlies, they'd have the proper codes. If they weren't, she'd buy the base a few precious seconds to wake up and fight. The convoy showed no signs of slowing down. 20 seconds. Riley keyed her radio one more time, broadcasting on the emergency frequency. Control, Tower 7. I have 3 unidentified vehicles approaching Checkpoint Alpha at high speed, requesting immediate backup and guidance. Still nothing but static. 10 seconds. The lead Humvee's brakes finally engaged, and the vehicle slewed sideways in a cloud of dust and burning rubber. The other 2 vehicles followed suit, forming a defensive triangle around Riley's checkpoint. Doors slammed open, and figures in full combat gear emerged with weapons ready. But they weren't pointing those weapons at her. They were scanning the perimeter, watching the darkness beyond the checkpoint, as if expecting an attack from the shadows. The driver of the lead vehicle removed his helmet, and Riley's world tilted on its axis. Captain Marcus Webb, killed in action 18 months ago during a classified operation in Syria. She'd attended his memorial service and watched his wife cry over a flag-draped coffin that everyone knew was empty because his body had never been recovered. But here he stood, very much alive, grinning up at her tower with the same cocky smile that had gotten him in trouble during their training days. "Evening, Phantom," he called out, using the call sign she'd carried during Ghostwire. "Hope you haven't gotten too comfortable in retirement. We've got work to do." Riley's finger finally found the alarm button, but for entirely different reasons than she'd expected. Because if Marcus Webb was alive, if Ghostwire was still operational, then everything she thought she knew about the last 2 years was a lie, and the explosions in the valley suddenly made a lot more sense. Riley's hand froze over the alarm button as Marcus Webb stepped into the harsh glare of the checkpoint's floodlights. The years had changed him. New scars traced silver lines across his jaw, and his eyes held a hardness that hadn't been there during their Ghostwire days. But it was definitely him, down to the way he unconsciously rolled his left shoulder, a habit he developed after taking shrapnel in Kandahar. "You're supposed to be dead," Riley whispered into her headset, her voice barely audible over the idling engines. Webb's grin widened. "Death's been greatly exaggerated. Now lower that barrier before someone notices we're having a family reunion." Riley's training warred with her shock. Every protocol screamed at her to sound the alarm, to call for backup, to treat this as a potential security breach. But the recognition codes, the call signs, the intimate knowledge of her past, it all pointed to something far more complex than a simple infiltration. "Prove it," she called down. "If you're really Marcus Webb, tell me what happened in the briefing room the night before Operation Sandstorm." Webb's expression sobered. "You threw a coffee mug at Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's head because he suggested using your asset as bait without extraction protocols. The mug missed, but your point didn't. Harrison reassigned you to intelligence analysis the next morning." Riley's breath caught. That incident had been witnessed by only 4 people, and according to official records, 3 of them were dead. She reached for the barrier controls, then stopped as movement in the other vehicles caught her eye. The passenger door of the second Humvee opened, and another ghost stepped out. Sergeant First Class David Chun, supposedly killed in the same IED blast that had claimed Webb. Chun moved with the same fluid grace she remembered. But now he carried himself like a man who'd seen too much and survived things that should have killed him. "Jesus Christ." Riley breathed. The third vehicle disgorged its own specter. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, the team's communications specialist. Santos had allegedly died in a helicopter crash 6 months after the others, but here she stood, very much alive and scanning the perimeter with professional paranoia. Webb noticed Riley's shock and his expression turned urgent. "I know this is a lot to process, Phantom, but we don't have time for a proper reunion. Check your Sector 7 surveillance feeds, now." Riley's hands moved automatically to her console, pulling up the camera feeds from the northeastern perimeter. The screens flickered to life, showing grainy infrared images of the valley beyond the base. At first, everything looked normal, empty terrain, scattered rocks, the occasional wild goat. Then she saw them. Heat signatures. Dozens of them, moving in coordinated patterns through the ravines and gullies that surrounded the base. They were still several kilometers out, but their movement was purposeful, tactical. Someone was staging for an assault. How many? Webb called up. Riley's fingers flew over the controls, switching between camera angles and adjusting thermal settings. "I count. Christ, at least 60 contacts. Maybe more. They're using the dead ground to mask their approach." 83, actually," Santos said, consulting a tablet. "Plus 12 vehicles staged in the next valley over. They'll hit the wire in approximately 27 minutes. Riley's mind reeled. "How do you know that? How do you know any of this?" Webb stepped closer to the tower, his voice dropping to a tone she remembered from their most classified briefings. "Because we've been tracking this cell for 18 months. They call themselves the Crimson Jihad, and they've been planning this attack since before you were assigned to this checkpoint." "That's impossible. Intelligence has been compromised," Chun interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of bitter experience. "The leak goes all the way to the top. Every operation we planned, every asset we deployed, somehow the enemy knew we were coming. Good people died because someone was selling information." Riley felt the world shifting beneath her feet. "So you faked your deaths?" "We had to," Webb said. "It was the only way to go dark, to operate without the enemy knowing our every move. For 18 months, we've been ghosts, tracking money, following communications, building a case against the traitors in our own ranks." Santos looked up from her tablet. 25 minutes now. They're accelerating their timeline." Riley's training finally overcame her shock. She reached for the alarm button. The Webb's sharp whistle stopped her. "Don't," he said. "Not yet. Are you insane? There are 2,000 soldiers sleeping behind me. I have to warn them. And the moment you do, our targets will know we're onto them," Chun said. "The people we've been hunting are on this base, Riley. They're waiting for this attack so they can facilitate it from the inside." Riley's blood turned cold. "Who?" Webb exchanged glances with his team. "We're not entirely sure yet. But we know they have access to base communications, security protocols, and troop movements. The moment you sound that alarm, they'll know something's wrong. So, what's your plan? Let 83 hostiles overrun the base? Not exactly, Santos said, pulling a modified radio from her pack. We've been preparing for this night for months. There are assets in position that the enemy doesn't know about. But we need you to help coordinate them. Riley stared at the radio Santos was offering. It looked like standard military equipment, but she could see modifications, additional encryption modules, frequency scramblers, and what looked like a quantum entanglement communicator. Technology that was still theoretical as far as she knew. What kind of assets? Webb's grin returned, but now it carried a predatory edge. The kind that officially don't exist. Remember, Operation Ghostwire wasn't just about intelligence gathering. We were building something bigger. A network of operators who could function completely off the books. You're talking about a shadow army. We're talking about patriots who are tired of watching good soldiers die because of traitors and bureaucrats, Chun said. People who are willing to do what needs to be done, regardless of what the politicians in Washington think. Riley looked at the surveillance feeds again. The heat signatures were closer now, moving with the confidence of an enemy who believed they had the element of surprise. In 23 minutes, they would hit the perimeter wire. In 25 minutes, they would be inside the base, killing sleeping soldiers who trusted people like her to keep them safe. What do you need me to do? Webb's expression turned serious. First, we need you to patch us into the base's communication network without triggering any alarms. Santos has a virus that will give us access to internal systems while making it look like routine maintenance. Second, Chung continued, we need you to identify which personnel have accessed security protocols in the last 48 hours. Our trader has been feeding information to the enemy, which means they've been in the system recently. Santos held up her tablet, showing a complex tactical display. Third, when we give the signal, you're going to broadcast a very specific message on a very specific frequency. It will sound like routine radio chatter, but it will actually activate every Ghostwire asset within 50 kilometers. Riley took the modified radio, feeling its weight in her hands. And if I refuse? Webb's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Then in 22 minutes, a lot of good soldiers are going to die. And the people responsible will disappear into the night, free to sell more secrets and kill more Americans. Riley looked at the surveillance feeds one more time. The enemy was close enough now that she could make out individual figures moving through the darkness. They carried themselves with the confidence of professionals, and their equipment looked far too sophisticated for a typical insurgent cell. She made her decision. Tell me what to do. Riley's fingers trembled as she connected Santos's modified radio to her communication console. The device interfaced seamlessly with the base's systems, its quantum encryption modules humming with barely audible energy. On her screens, lines of code began scrolling past Santos's virus, working its way through the network like digital smoke. Access granted, Santos reported from below. I'm in the personnel database now. Riley, I need you to pull up security logs for the past 72 hours. Anyone who accessed classified operational parameters. Riley's hands moved across her keyboard with practiced efficiency, but her mind was reeling. 3 minutes ago, she'd been a gate guard pulling routine duty. Now she was apparently part of a shadow operation that had been 18 months in the making. Got it, she said, watching names populate her screen. 12 personnel accessed Level 4 security protocols since Monday. Wait. Her blood chilled as she recognized one of the names. Major Patricia Hawkins accessed the duty roster and perimeter schedules yesterday at 2,300 hours. Webb's voice carried up from the checkpoint, sharp with interest. Hawkins? She's the base intelligence officer. She's also the one who recommended me for this assignment, Riley said, pieces of a horrifying puzzle clicking into place. She said I needed to decompress after my previous posting. That gate duty would help me process my experiences. Chung cursed softly. She didn't assign you here to decompress. She put you here because she knew about tonight's attack. You were supposed to be the inside man, whether you knew it or not. Riley's stomach lurched. What do you mean? Think about it, Webb said. You're former Ghostwire, which means you have security clearances that most gate guards don't. If something went wrong tonight, if the attack succeeded, who would investigators blame? The traumatized former intelligence operative who snapped and failed to sound the alarm in time. The implications hit Riley like a physical blow. She'd been set up as a patsy, positioned to take the fall for what was supposed to look like a catastrophic security failure. Her assignment to this remote checkpoint hadn't been punishment or therapy. It had been preparation for her role as a scapegoat. 19 minutes, Santos announced, consulting her tablet. The assault teams are moving into final positions. Riley forced herself to focus on the immediate crisis. What about the other names on the access list? Cross-reference them with current duty assignments, Webb ordered. Anyone who's supposed to be on duty tonight but isn't at their post. Riley's fingers flew across the keyboard. Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, duty officer for the night shift. He should be in the command center, but she switched to the internal security cameras, scanning the command center. He's not there. The duty desk is empty. Son of a bitch, Chun muttered. Morrison's the one who would coordinate the base's response to an attack. If he's not at his post, then, when the shooting starts, there will be no coordinated defense, Webb finished. Just chaos and confusion while 83 hostiles pour through the wire? Riley felt sick. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just about selling intelligence. It was about orchestrating a massacre. We have to warn someone. General Patterson, the XO, somebody in the chain of command who isn't compromised. Negative, Santos said firmly. We don't know how deep this goes. For all we know, Patterson's in on it too. The moment we break operational security, our targets will scatter, and we'll lose our only chance to stop them. 17 minutes, Webb announced, checking his watch. Riley, I need you to access the base's defensive systems. Can you activate the perimeter sensors without triggering an alert? Riley's hands moved to a different console, one she'd been trained on but never expected to use. I can bring them online in passive mode. They'll detect movement, but won't sound alarms. Do it. Santos, what's the status on our assets? Santos consulted her tablet, which was now displaying a tactical map dotted with green icons. 12 Ghostwire operatives in position around the perimeter. 4 sniper teams on the ridgelines. 2 demolition specialists have rigged the access roads with remote charges. Riley stared at the display in amazement. You've had people watching this base for months? We've had people watching everywhere, Chun said. Every major installation, every forward operating base, anywhere the enemy might strike. Ghostwire didn't end when we officially died. It evolved. The perimeter sensors came online, and Riley's screens filled with new data. The approaching assault force was larger than they'd initially estimated, and their equipment was far more sophisticated than typical insurgent gear. These weren't local fighters with improvised weapons. They were professionals with military-grade hardware. Jesus, Riley breathed. They've got anti-tank missiles, heavy machine guns, even what looks like a mortar team. Crimson Jihad has been well-funded, Webb said grimly, courtesy of the intelligence they've been buying from our traders. They know exactly how this base is defended, which means they know exactly how to defeat those defenses. 15 minutes, Santos announced. Riley, we need you to do something that's going to feel wrong, but it's crucial to the operation. Riley's stomach clenched. What? We need you to disable the automated alert systems for sectors 7 through 12. If the perimeter sensors detect the assault force, they'll trigger alarms that will wake the entire base. You want me to help them attack us? We want you to control the timing, Webb explained. Our assets are in position, but they need the enemy to commit fully before we spring the trap. If alarms start going off too early, the assault teams will withdraw and try again another night. Riley's hands hovered over the controls. Everything in her training screamed against what they were asking. But the alternative was worse, a massacre of sleeping soldiers, orchestrated by traitors in their own ranks. There's something else, Chun said quietly. Major Hawkins isn't just feeding intelligence to the enemy. According to the communications we've intercepted, she's supposed to eliminate you tonight. Riley's blood turned to ice. What? During the confusion of the attack, you're going to have an accident, Santos explained. A stray round, friendly fire in the darkness. Your death will be just another tragedy in a night full of them. The pieces of the conspiracy crystallized in Riley's mind. She wasn't just a scapegoat, she was a loose end. Someone who knew too much about Ghostwire, who might ask inconvenient questions if she survived. Her assignment to this checkpoint hadn't just been about positioning her to take blame. It had been about positioning her to die. 30 minutes, Webb announced. Riley, we need that decision now. Riley looked at her screens, at the approaching enemy force, at the sleeping base behind her. 2,000 soldiers who trusted her to keep them safe. But the people they really needed protection from weren't coming from outside the wire. They were already inside. Wearing the same uniform she wore, she reached for the controls and began disabling the automated alert systems. What happens after we stop them? After we stop them, we disappear again, Webb said. But this time, we take Hawkins and Morrison with us, along with anyone else who's been selling American blood for foreign gold. Riley's screens went dark as the alert system shut down. In 12 minutes, the most sophisticated attack in the region's history would begin. And the only thing standing between the enemy and 2,000 sleeping soldiers was a handful of ghosts who officially didn't exist. Ghostwire assets, this is Phantom, Riley said into the modified radio. The sleeper is awake. Repeat, the sleeper is awake. Across the valley, invisible figures began moving into final positions. Riley's hands moved across her console with deadly precision, each keystroke bringing the Shadow War into sharp focus. On her screens, the tactical display showed Ghostwire assets converging on predetermined positions like pieces on a chessboard. But this wasn't a game. In 10 minutes, the most sophisticated assault in the region's history would begin. And she was the only person who could coordinate the defense. 9 minutes, Santos announced, her voice tight with concentration. Crimson Jihad's advance teams are at the wire. They're cutting through the outer perimeter now. Riley watched the thermal imaging feeds as figures in advanced, tactical gear moved through the darkness with surgical precision. They knew exactly where the sensors were, exactly which routes to take to avoid detection. The level of inside information was staggering. Phantom, this is Wraith 7, a voice crackled through the modified radio. Riley recognized the call sign 1 of the sniper teams positioned on the ridgeline. I have eyes on the mortar team. They're setting up in grid square 247. Request permission to engage. Riley's finger hovered over the transmit button. Once she gave that order, there would be no going back. Ghostwire would be fully operational again, and she would be complicit in an off-the-books military action that could land them all in federal prison if they survived. Negative. Wraith 7, Webb's voice cut through the channel. Hold position until Phantom gives the execute order. 8 minutes, Santos called out. Riley, I'm showing movement in the command center. Someone just entered through the rear access. Riley switched to the internal security cameras and felt her blood freeze. Major Patricia Hawkins was moving through the darkened command center with a suppressed pistol in her hand. She wasn't there to coordinate the base's defense. She was there to ensure there wouldn't be one. "She's going for the communication hub," Riley whispered. "If she takes out the main comms, the base will be completely isolated." "Not if we stop her first," Chun said, checking his weapon. "I can be there in 3 minutes." "Negative," Webb ordered. "We stick to the plan." "Riley, can you lock down the command center remotely?" Riley's fingers flew across her keyboard. "I can trigger a security lockdown, but it'll trap Hawkins inside with all the communication equipment. She could still sabotage everything." 7 minutes, Santos announced. "The assault teams are through the outer wire. They're moving toward the inner perimeter." Riley made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Instead of locking down the command center, she activated the internal communication system and began broadcasting on the base-wide frequency. "Attention all personnel. This is Tower 7. We have confirmed hostile forces breaching the perimeter. This is not a drill. All units to defensive positions immediately." The effect was instantaneous. Lights began flickering on across the base as 2,000 soldiers jolted awake. Emergency sirens wailed to life, and the quick reaction force began mobilizing. But Riley had also just signed the death warrant for every Ghostwire operative in the field. "What the hell are you doing?" Webb shouted from below. "Saving lives," Riley replied, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. "I won't let those soldiers die just to protect your operation." "You've just compromised 18 months of work," Santos said, her voice filled with fury. "The traitors will scatter now. We'll never get another chance like this." 6 minutes, Riley announced, watching the tactical display as Crimson Jihad forces accelerated their assault. "They know we're awake now. They're going to hit us with everything they have." The first explosions lit up the night as the enemy mortar team opened fire. Shells rained down on the motor pool and the communications building, sending geysers of flame and debris into the air. But instead of catching sleeping soldiers, they found empty buildings and prepared defensive positions. "All Ghostwire assets. This is Phantom," Riley broadcast on the encrypted channel. "Execute, execute, execute. Weapons free on all hostile targets." The valley erupted in coordinated violence. Sniper rifles cracked from the ridgelines, dropping enemy fighters with surgical precision. Demolition charges detonated along the access roads, cutting off retreat routes and channeling the assault force into predetermined kill zones. The invisible army that Webb had built over 18 months revealed itself in a symphony of controlled destruction. "Wraith 7, confirmed kill on the mortar team," came the report. "Secondary explosions indicate we got their ammunition as well." "Spectre 2, I have multiple targets in the eastern approach. Engaging now." Riley coordinated the defense with the skill of someone born for this moment. She directed sniper fire, called in artillery strikes from hidden positions, and orchestrated a battle that would be studied in military academies for decades to come. But even as Ghostwire assets decimated the assault force, she knew the real battle was just beginning. "Riley," Webb's voice cut through the tactical chatter, "Hawkins is moving toward your position. She's got a team with her." Riley looked down from her tower to see Webb, Chun, and Santos taking defensive positions around the checkpoint. But they were outnumbered and outgunned by the approaching security team led by Major Hawkins. "Tower 7, this is Major Hawkins," came the voice over Riley's radio. "You are relieved of duty. Stand down immediately and prepare for debriefing." Riley keyed her microphone. "Negative, Major. I'm coordinating the defense of this base." "You're coordinating an unauthorized military action using compromised personnel," Hawkins replied, her voice cold with authority. "Surrender now, and you might live to see a court-martial." Through her scope, Riley could see Hawkins and her team approaching the checkpoint. They moved with military precision, but their weapons were trained on Webb's position, not on the enemy forces still fighting in the valley. 4 minutes until the main assault wave hits, Santos reported. Riley, whatever you're going to do it now. Riley made her choice. She grabbed the emergency demolition charges that every guard tower was equipped with, devices designed to destroy sensitive equipment if the position was about to be overrun. But instead of using them on her own equipment, she aimed them at something far more valuable. Major Hawkins, Riley broadcast on the open frequency, ensuring that every radio in the base could hear her. This is Staff Sergeant Riley Knox. I have evidence that you and Lieutenant Colonel Morrison have been selling classified information to enemy forces. You are under citizen's arrest for treason. The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Across the base, soldiers who had been focused on the external threat suddenly turned their attention to the drama unfolding at the checkpoint. You're insane, Hawkins replied. But Riley could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Santos, transmit the evidence package, Riley ordered. All frequencies, all channels. Let everyone see what we've found. The modified radio crackled to life, broadcasting 18 months of intercepted communications, financial records, and operational intelligence that painted a clear picture of the conspiracy. Hawkins's voice could be heard coordinating with enemy forces. Morrison's signature appeared on documents that had led to American deaths, and the scope of the betrayal became undeniable. 3 minutes, Santos announced. The main assault is beginning. But the assault was doomed. Crimson Jihad had planned their attack based on intelligence that assumed a sleeping, unprepared base. Instead, they found 2,000 angry soldiers who had just learned that their own officers had been trying to get them killed. The battle that followed was less a fight than an execution. Enemy forces found themselves caught between the awakened base defenders and the Ghost wire assets that had been hunting them for months. Within an hour, it was over. Riley climbed down from her tower as the sun began to rise over the mountains. Webb was waiting for her, his expression unreadable. You destroyed our operation, he said. I saved our people, Riley replied. That's what we're supposed to do. Webb studied her for a long moment, then smiled. Welcome back to Ghostwire, Phantom. We've got work to do.